Board of Education. Mr. Chanel, would you call the roll?
Dr. Beal? Mr. Jones? Mr. Morar?
Here.
Mr. Oscus?
Here.
Mrs. Zern?
Here.
Okay, I'd like to have everyone join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business is public comment. Just as a reminder, all public speakers are asked to complete a public comment form and are reminded that they have 3 minutes as an allotted time to speak. As a matter of policy, all comments are directed at the presiding officer. If we can't answer your questions tonight, we have your contact information. You will hear from a representative of the district that is knowledgeable in your area of questions. And in the interest of transparency, the answers will be repeated at the next month's meeting. Before speaking, please state your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate. Our first speaker is Jacob Doodle.
Hello,
And your name?
Jacob Dower.
Dower, sorry.
Yeah.
Address?
Anyway, what?
Here.
No, 602 East 300th Street.
Perfect.
This is the first time I've ever done this.
That's okay. Go ahead.
So, I am an Excel tech student, meaning I go to another school and then back to normal school, 2 separate schools. But I stay at the Excel tech school for a certain amount of time. By the time I get back to regular school, I missed lunch entirely. But the problem is that some students, like in Excel tech students, also miss lunch. And some students depend on lunch as their only source of food. And not only do they miss lunch, but part of their classes as well. And some students get back to school later than I do. And I just see that as a problem. I think we should change that, because every Wednesday as well are shortened. So that's when I miss lunches. And
Is
that's
it, what about the other days, Jacob? You don't miss it the other days, do you?
No, but I feel that...
Just on Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay. What time do you get back on Wednesday?
Get back?
Yeah. You go to Excel Tech in the morning?
Yeah.
What time do you get back?
Like 11.
11, and lunches are over at 11?
I don't know necessarily the exact time.
Okay. What program are you in, Jacob?
Business Academy.
So you're in Willoughby then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. I'll find out. You shouldn't be missing lunch, and we'll fix that if that's happening, okay?
All right.
You can probably help me with that, Nancy.
And we can call you at the phone number you listed here?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
And I believe that's the only public speaker we have listed. Is that correct, Mr. Chino?
Correct.
Great. Thank you. The next item is the approval for the minutes of August 10th of 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs. Zern.
I make the motion to approve item 2A, approval of the minutes of August 10th, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Do I hear a second? Mr. Murdock? Thank you. Do I hear a discussion? Mr. Chanel?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Morar?
Yes.
Mr. Oscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item 2B, approval of the minutes of August 31st, 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr.
Yes.
President, I would like to make a motion to approve item 2B, approval of minutes of August 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Oscus. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Chanel?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Morar?
Yes.
Mr. Oscus?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And the next item is the treasurer's report. So, Mr. Chanel?
Item A is the monthly financials. I appreciate all of your feedback in terms of what you were looking for. The theme was more transparency, so I heard you guys loud and clear. And I hope that these reports are to your liking. The first graph I wanted to hit on that one real quick, was the cash reserves, and you will see in January a reserve of about $3 million. And that is with a tax advance of $3 million. So we will be very close in January. However, I have reached out to the county auditor's office, and they are stating if we reach out and get an advance in January, they will advance in January.
And that's only in advance by a couple of weeks, correct?
By a couple of weeks. So typically, you'll get your advances in February, maybe we'll move up by a week or two, just to ensure that we get partial advance in January.
Thank you for reaching.
Thank you too. And for some reason, I'm not sure how, every once in a while a rumor gets started in the district. I know, it's shocking. But one of the rumors was that some staff members are concerned that if we can't make payroll in December, we're going to close the school district. That's not how it works. If something catastrophic happened and he's off and we actually need the money in December versus January, then we have options. Well, it is not an option A, not to pay people, and it is not an option to B, close the district. We would have to finance that, which we're working very hard to avoid and not do, and we project that we won't have to, but if you hear that, that is not based in fact. So.
Yes, that's letter for your approval.
All right, and that is part of the consent agenda. So item 3B.
Those are the amended appropriations. I also have the amended 412 certificate, which is which accompanies the appropriation and goes to the county auditor's office as well. And these you'll find tied to the financial report.
Item C.
Item C is the amended certificate. That will also go to the county auditor's office, and those also tie to the monthly financial report.
And item D.
That is an agreement with the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging. That is to support the services for senior citizens. That is a federal grant that's awarded to us, and that is what we pay that goes to. That's the RSVP. So it is a federal grant that pays for those services.
And that is not part of the consent agenda. So do I hear a motion to accept the agreement with the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging, RSVP?
President,
Yes, Mr.
I make a motion that we approve the agreement with RSVP.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President,
Mr. Jones?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? So I think we've heard in the past that we're just the kind of the financial go-between in this.
Right, yeah, this is not taxpayer money, not our district taxpayer money. And it's also, remember, RSVP plays a pretty critical role for us. Provide hundreds and hundreds of hours of tutoring for us. So I think it's probably not working like it would normally under COVID, but typically that's what happens, especially in our elementary schools.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Mr. China?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerman?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item 3E.
This is a service agreement with Cintas on behalf of the Cornerstone Christian Academy. We hold their auxiliary dollars. This is state funding that we are a pass-through for, and as a result, for audit purposes, we do have to accept this agreement on their behalf.
Item 3F.
This is a proposal to open a bank account with Farmers National Bank. They're willing to give us an interest rate of 40 basis points. Star Ohio is currently getting 25 basis points, so this is a 60% increase for the remainder of the year. And then starting in January, we will go 10 basis points above Star Ohio. This is strictly for interest. This has no bearing on our bank operations with U.S. Bank, which is our local branches, just where the money is being held prior to paying bills.
So our financial situation is resolved.
That's right.
Nice work, Nick.
And it's what percent.
Thank you. And that is not part of the consent agenda, so do I hear a motion to approve item 3F, bank account with Farmers National Bank?
Mr. President?
Yes,
I would like to make a motion to approve item 3F, bank account with Farmers National Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Do I hear a second? Mr. Murray?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there any discussion?
So Nick, this money is currently with Star Ohio, correct?
Correct. So we just would move it from Star Ohio, which is at 0.25%, to Farmers National Bank, which is 0.4%. So we'll just earn more interest. So,
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Trenholm?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerrin?
Abstain.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 4-0.
Item 3G.
This is purchase orders and blanket certificates. We have 2 then announced certificates, one for Nichols Paper and Supply for hand sanitizer stands and refills, and one for Active Plumbing Supply for various plumbing supplies. And we also have 2 blanket certificates for $50,000 or more for nursing reimbursement for loans. These are direct loans, refunds to adult programs, fall 2020. You'll notice the one was for $10,000. We had to convert that one quicker in order to get that process before the board meeting, so they wanted to do it for about $49,000. And I said, let's just do it for what you need it for, then we'll get it board approved as well. But that is a requirement, so that was a timing issue. We were forced to do that one quicker.
Item 3H.
Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant, that was a grant that Mr. McKinney applied for and got for $26,000, and then we also got $10,000 from the Vail Foundation for NCI Willoughby, and also an additional grant from Expanding Opportunities for Each Child for $22,040.
Item 3I.
So transfer of funds to the termination benefit fund for $65,000.
3J.
Transfer of funds to the field house and pool fund. We are supposed to pay $10,000 per year. However, $10,000 was not transferred last year, so we had to do $20,000 this year for last year and this year.
Who's holding that? Can you see that?
Who holds the funds?
Yes.
We do.
Can you verify that the other entities have paid what they owe as well?
I'll confirm.
Thank you.
Is that match funds?
Yes. It's a sinking fund, how we maintain the field house. And I believe Chuck Murphy volunteered you to be the representative on the shared use agreement with the YMCA and the city. Is that correct?
Yes,
Did you
sir.
vote on that?
That's correct.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Item 3K.
This is a transfer from permanent improvement to the 002 fund. This is to pay debt.
3L.
These are student activity purpose, goals, and budgets for fiscal year 21. As you can see, there's a number of accounts that have amendments, and also there's an attachment.
Item 3M.
We have 4 donations. The first is from Sandy Orlando. She donated various hand and electric tools to the Success Academy program at NCI in Willoughby. Lou Brazil donated 10 $50 Walmart gift cards for Dress for Success, which is part of the Bridge to Success program at NCI Willoughby. The Soy PTO donated $3,000 for the Reflex program at Soy. in Florida donated a 2001 Chevy Malibu to the Auto Collision Program at NCI Willoughby. I'm not sure how to say your last name.
And thank you to those folks for doing that as well. Appreciate it very much.
And that concludes the treasurer's report. The next item is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under questions and answers, we didn't have any questions that are presented at our last board meeting, but there have been a lot of questions that weren't officially brought to the board, but have been kind of bubbling out there, so I just wanted to make sure we address it at a board meeting, and that is what happened to all the properties. So a lot of questions about what happened at the sale of our properties. So everything's sold with the exception of our barns. We did meet with a committee that's trying to save the barns. I think once they got inside and saw the extent of the damage in the main barn, you could see how that was disconcerting for the group. But they're still not, they're fighters though. They haven't given up hope yet. So we've asked for an extension with the city because the city has an issue with those barns, and plus they're unsafe. So we'll see if they can come up with any funds. It'll cost us approximately $25,000, give or take, to have those barns removed. It would be my desire to pledge that money towards the project, which is probably about 1/5 of what they would need to renovate those barns. But part of that deal would be turning that over to the Ohio Historical Society, and they would be responsible for those properties moving forward. So that's kind of where we are. The properties at Browning Elementary sold for $385,000. The land on River Road sold for $258,500 in Willoughby Hills. The property on Shankland, right across from the old board office by the high school, sold for $236,498. Washington Elementary on Vegas Drive sold for $198,000. Taft property on 332nd Street in Eastlake sold for $187,000 for a total of $1,264,998. Steve Johnson, is he here? Not here. Steve Johnson really spearheaded that and did an excellent job of organizing it and keeping it going. I just showed up at the auction and signed documents, so it was pretty easy from my perspective, but Steve did a really fantastic job, and we were happy with our auctioneers getting what we feel like is the most for those properties that we could get. So barn still to be determined. And then in terms of just public recognition, there's a couple of folks I'd like to highlight, but one of them is here, Mr. Zurin. Thank you very much for the work that he put forth organizing. I don't even know how many book bags and school supplies, but he handed out a lot of those before he even came to the board office, and then brought a whole carload of book bags and book supplies to us, which we put together and then moved out to our elementary schools. So we're very grateful for that. Thank you for that effort, Dr. Zurin. Appreciate it significantly. I would also like to thank the Willoughby Library. They also provided book bags and supplies. The Chamber of Commerce came through with a lot of PP&E for us. And the ESC of Northeast Ohio actually provided us with 16,000 masks. So we've had a lot of hands pitching in to help us make our way through it. And if there's somebody out there that would like to give us about 4,000 Chromebooks, new ones, that would be outstanding, as we're trying to get those in, as you can imagine how that works.
Thank you. Next item.
Mr. President, item A is a resolution to essentially sell property, and this first thing we have to do is set the parcel. So this goes way back, years and years ago, and most people probably don't even know it, but the YMCA actually had some land parceled from the school district that includes a chunk of that back parking lot. It's just a couple of acres. But the development that's going to take place there needs that additional couple of acres to make this whole deal work. So we're in the process of getting it to the point where we can sell it. So this first item is to change the parcel so that we can in fact sell it.
That is item 5A. Do I hear, you've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do I hear a motion to pass item 5A?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs.
I make the motion to approve item 5A, resolution to initiate the sale of school property associated with permanent parcel number 271-015-0-00-003-0.
Thank you, Mrs. Zimmer. Do I hear a second? Mrs. Zimmer? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, the parcel number in the document shows 27A-.
I'll make sure it does.
Thank you.
So there's the number's wrong.
Yeah, resolution number, like in the actual document, it says a resolution to initiate the sale of school property associated with permanent parcel number 27A-15.
Thank you.
Yeah, not sure.
I'll get it fixed. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Chinola?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zimmer?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item B is a continuation of exactly the same piece of property. It's the next step to terminate the lease and allow us to sell.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 5B?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 5B, lot split at 30841 Wood Avenue, will meet and termination and release of restricted covenants.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
I'd like the second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear discussion? Mr. Chinola?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zimmer?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item C for your consideration is the hourly rate increase for our SROs. Currently, each city was different in terms of pay for doing the same job, which got confusing for payroll and didn't really make a whole lot of sense. We also found out that we weren't very competitive with our neighbors in terms of pay for our SROs. So what this resolution is asking to do is to increase from $36 to $37 an hour this year and do that by $1 an hour per year until they hit $40 for the next 3 years.
Do I hear a motion to approve item 5C, student resource officers hourly rate? Yes, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Murray. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Zimmer. Do I hear discussion?
Steve, is $40 like the competitive rate?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to get to, yeah. Most of them right now are around $39 to $40 an hour. So we brought all the chiefs together, came to what we thought was, some were as low as 33 and some were as high as 38. So that's kind of where we came together.
Do I hear any other discussion? Mr. Chinola?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zimmer?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Mr. Conley?
Thank you. Mr. President, item D for your consideration is a WIDA memorandum of agreement as it relates to COVID-19. And I have to give a lot of kudos to my entire cabinet, and really, not because she's sitting here, but Nancy was also instrumental, and so was Rob McPhee, all summer, really spring through summer, trying to get ready to make this school year as successful as we can, and knock on wood. We still have some glitches like Jacob mentioned, but generally speaking, so far we're still operational, still doing well. We've had our challenges, but each one of the cabinet members have really worked very, very hard. Chuck has led a lot of difficult negotiations with, well, not difficult negotiations actually, just some working through some negotiations that had to be made and modifications to contracts in order for us to do what we're doing. So this is a live streaming agreement. Mr. Murphy, can you kind of summarize that for us?
Sure. You know, as Mr. Thompson said, due to some of the unique circumstances that COVID brings, we had to, you know, our negotiated agreement didn't specify how to handle a pandemic, so we had to work a little bit, but live streaming, as he said, evaluations and how those would be different, in particular student growth measures, and as well as planning time and how we would address planning time, especially 7/12 due to our Wednesday schedule. So that's basically what's highlighted in this MOA.
And what is the reason for Wednesday's early release, Mr. Murphy?
Well, it's a challenge, to say the least, for our staff to not only teach students in brick and mortar, but simultaneously teaching live stream, and then what goes along with that in terms of planning, in terms of getting the technology ready. They're also taping that and putting it up for students to view and families to view as well. So with all that extra work, we felt like it was necessary to provide some extra time for them to have, and also to collaborate with one another.
When we found out just how difficult it is, it seems simple on the surface to say close school 2 hours early. It's presented a lot of challenges.
Okay, so I hear a motion to pass item 5B, WIDA memorandum agreement, COVID-19.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mrs.
I'll make the motion to approve item D, WIDA memorandum of agreement COVID-19.
Thank you, Mrs. Zerrin. Do I hear a second? Mr. Rasmus?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmus. Is there any discussion? Mr. Trinidad?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Mr. Rasmus?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item E for your consideration is a second WIDA, Willoughby Eastlake Teacher Association, if you're unfamiliar with WIDA, memorandum of agreement. This stipend is the union president here for predates Chuck and I by many years, I think, in terms of the fact that the teacher does not work a full schedule. They work 2 periods, I believe, per day. Is that correct, Mr. Murphy?
Yep.
2 periods. And then the rest of their salary is reimbursed. Is that correct, Mr. Murphy?
That's correct.
So that's what this WIDA agreement is.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to pass resolution 5E, WIDA memorandum of agreement? Yes, Mr.
I'll make a motion to pass item 5B.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Do I hear a second? Mr. President? Mr. Jones?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear discussion? No? Mr. Trinidad?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bernard?
Yes.
Mr. Rasmus?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item F for your consideration is an amendment to the treasurer's contract. Came into my office and demanded more money. So we settled at $18 more per year. So, it was actually when we created that salary schedule, and then actually slid him in. I think we had Mr. Murphy on the fly at night in his pajamas doing the schedule. As it turns out, Nick is the recipient of an $18 per year pay raise. Congratulations. Next tax bracket, that's what it is. The second amendment on that contract was the dollar amount for the cell phone reimbursement was not correct. It should be $50, and that's what's now in there in his contract. And then the third was what we knew was going to come when we were uncertain what his start date would be. So those are the three amendments to that contract.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to accept resolution 5G? No, I'm sorry, 5F, the treasurer contract amendment?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mrs.
I make the motion to approve item 5F, treasurer contract amended.
Do I hear a second? Thank you, Mr. Murray. Do I hear any discussion? Okay, Mr. Shinall?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerring?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item G for your consideration is a resolution terminating an employee for misconduct and negligence of duty. That sounds really bad, and the situation's not great, but it is an employee who no-showed to work. I suspect probably because of COVID, but simply didn't resign, which would have been our recommendation for that employee to resign versus being terminated, but without a resignation, that just really puts us in an awkward position.
Do I hear a resolution to pass a resolution, 5G, resolution terminating the employment of Samantha Fair for misconduct and neglect of duty? Ms. Murray?
I'll make a motion to pass resolution 5P, terminating the employment of Samantha Fair.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I have a second motion.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Is there any discussion? Mr. Trinell?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerring?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Mr. Thompson?
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Item H for your consideration is the certified substitute pay schedule. It's been updated.
Do I hear a motion to pass item 5H, certified substitute pay schedule?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr.
I motion to approve item 5H, certified substitute pay schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, I will second to pass item H.
Thank you. Do I hear discussion? Mr. Trinell?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Menard?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerring?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item I for your consideration is the classified substitute pay schedule that has recently been updated.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Do I hear a motion to accept item 5I, classified substitute pay schedule?
Mr. President, I will make a motion to approve item 5I, classified substitute pay schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President,
Mr. Dunn?
I would like to second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Trinell?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Menard? Yes. Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerring?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Item J for your consideration is an amendment to a job description. It's secretary to the treasurer purchasing department. To give you a little bit of background on that position, that the employee who most recently held that position served strictly as a secretary to the treasurer. And historically in the district, it's gone both ways. There's been a secretary to the treasurer and no assistant treasurer, or there's been an assistant treasurer and no secretary. It's pretty much how it's gone until, I would say about 4 years ago, I believe, 3 to 4 years ago, when Mr. Parkinson came to the board and requested a secretary and was granted the secretary and she held that position for the last 3 to 4 years. In the administration's assessment, we felt like that position was not a full-time position. Certainly duties there, but didn't equate into a full-time position, and we were prepared to not replace her on her departure. However, we also, as you know, cut some administrative positions this school year. One of them was out of our business department, and the individual who was handling all the purchasing is no longer, that position was not filled, that person was riffed. And we started noticing purchasing was falling through the cracks, and we were kind of falling back into some of our old patterns, which we know in the long run was very it was not cost effective, because we were buying in silos and not communicating, and it needs to be centralized. So in my conversations with Nick, it was, I give Nick the credit, he's the one who thought of the idea, and I support that idea 100%. And that is that we take there are definitely some administrative duties that need to be done, and there is also purchasing that needs to be done, neither of which are full-time, but we put them together and they are. So we created a job description. I shouldn't say we. Mr. Murphy and Nick created the job description for this position, and we have applicants that we feel are qualified. Is that fair to say, Nick? Don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know you reviewed some of those applicants.
Over 100 applicants.
Wow, I didn't realize there was that many. Okay, so I guess that's a sign of the times, I guess. But and some of them are clearly qualified for that position. It's an exempt position, meaning non-union position. So that we feel like it's justified and stays within the scope of what we were paying historically. So it's not an impact to the budget. A lot to say. Get to that. Oh, thank you. Mr. President, the next item for approval from the board is the affiliation agreement with the Department of Education and Psychology at John Carroll University. While John Carroll is no Heidelberg, it is still a fairly decent university, so we are pleased to partner with them.
I take personal angst with that.
Oh, did you go to John Carroll? I didn't know.
No, I think it is the Heidelberg of Northeast 21. They're ranked number 2 in U.S. News and World Report.
Fake news. And then, item L for your consideration is our special services agreement, and this is with Monarch and PSI. So these are pretty standard agreements that we have from year to year. Item M for your agreement is a mediation agreement. Again, these are done regularly, but still like to give Eileen Bowers kudos. She does a really good job of managing our kids that are out of district and back in district, and manages all of that, which is very, very complicated and a lot of moving parts, and does an excellent job of providing the right resources for students and the right settings for students, while at the same time being cognizant and aware of the implications to the budget. So Eileen does a great job with that. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
So that is a mediation agreement, fairly standard. Item N for your consideration is the transportation and bus stops. We have the only change really to our bus stops is that we did not give as many options for people in terms of multiple drop-offs or multiple pickups. They have 2. I believe that is correct. Correct, 2. Everyone's looking at me like I'm not saying anything because I'm not 100% sure. I believe it is 2 stops that we have offered, and historically we've offered 5. So that becomes incredibly complicated for transportation, as you can imagine, and inefficient. And just a reminder, our elementary walk zone is 1 mile. Anybody 1 mile or further is transported. In the middle school, high school, it's 2 miles. And then there are a few exceptions to that based on just the geography of where they live in terms of roads they might have to cross, et cetera, et cetera. Item O for your consideration, it's a lot of policies that I'm sure you have read, but all of these are a second read, so these are adoptions. The only one I would bring to your attention, the one that we had a special meeting on, is number 9, policy 5310.01, the COVID-19 screening test. We did make the changes that we kind of talked about and then put out, so it wasn't any significant or substantive change, but it was definitely some language change, which doesn't always happen from first read to second read, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. And then item P is the personnel section. This is for the brass advisor, and it is for your consideration.
So do I hear a motion to pass item 5P, personnel supplementals for the brass advisor?
Mr. President, I make the motion to approve item 5P, personnel supplementals for the brass advisor.
Do I hear a second? Yes, please. Thank you. Do I just, any discussion? Mr. Charnell?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Abstain.
Carries 4-0.
Mr. Thompson?
And finally, yes. The last agenda item is the personnel agenda. Again, all the folks that you see appearing on this list are pending the Ohio Department of Education and the Federal Bureau of Investigation records to be returned before they will be formally approved as employees of the district.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to pass item 5Q, personnel agenda? Mr. Roskis?
I would like to make a motion for item 5Q, personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Roskis. Do I hear a second? Mr. Jones?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Charnell?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
Next item, item 6, is the meeting notification that our next regular board meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for October 12th, 2020 at 7 o'clock here at the BOE September Board of Education located at 35353 Curtis Boulevard. Next item for our consideration is the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
Mr. President,
Yes, please.
I make the motion to approve the consent calendar, item 7A, adoption of the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mrs. Zernick. Do we hear a second? Mr. Jones? Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Chanella?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
And finally, item 8 is our closing. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do we hear a second? Mr. Russell?
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Chanella?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Roskis?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Adjourned at 7:45.
Thank you.